feel satisfied. I don't feel like I've ever embarrassed myself or my people, you know, in nothing that I've done. And yet, no, I got the whole world fearing me, you know what I'm saying? At 23, weighing 160 pounds, you know what I'm saying? And I ain't even started. I haven't even wrote my plan out yet, and they scared. I got the vice president know who I am, the president, every cop in every city.
What if the biggest tragedy in hip-hop wasn't even real? That single question has haunted fans, cops, and reporters for almost 30 years now. Because when you dig into what really went down in Las Vegas back in September 1996, the holes in the story aren't just small, they're massive. They say Tupac Shakur was hit in a drive-by, rushed to the hospital, and gone 6 days later before being quietly laid to rest. But from the moment the Vegas strip lights came back on that night, the story started falling apart. No arrests, no charges, not even when a man who claimed to know the shooter came forward. Nobody got locked up, nobody stood trial. Then there's the so-called cremation, allegedly done within 24 hours of the announcement.
He was talking a lot of too. He was talking a whole lot of and sometimes like they gonna get at you when you talking. They gonna get at you, bro. You feel me? And as far as the situation, I know, you know, it's supposed to be between him and Haitian Jack and some jury or some like that or whatever it was, you know. And Biggie was telling, bro, you don't even with that.
Way too fast. Even close friends said they never saw the body. And just like that, all the proof started disappearing. The coroner's photos, never released, the hospital's medical files, gone without a trace, the crematory worker who supposedly handled the ashes, retired the very next day and vanished completely. It's the type of chain of events that no ordinary person could ever pull off, yet somehow this one slid by like nothing happened. The official story says the case went cold because no one would talk, but people close to the situation whisper something way darker. They say this wasn't a cover-up after the fact. It was a plan, a setup that might have been in motion long before the first shot ever rang out. Everything changed again in 2018. That's when a man named Michael Nice stepped into the spotlight and his story shook the internet. He wasn't just another random conspiracy guy. This was someone with a real background in security and political work. Nice claimed he had ties to figures connected to the Black Panthers, the same movement that shaped Tupac's own parents. According to him, when whispers spread that a hit was about to go down on Tupac, a secret rescue team was quietly put together to get him out of America before it was too late.
Humans are not just good and bad, black and white. They're compassionate at times. They're at times. A man can be and compassionate to women at the same time. I was. Look at the lunatic and look at Brenda's Got a Baby.
Nice said he was part of that mission himself, and what he described sounded like something straight out of a spy movie. He said Tupac was secretly flown out of Nevada on a private jet under the fake story of a medical evacuation and landed in Barbados before being moved again. But here's the wildest part. The body left behind wasn't even Tupac's, according to Nice. He claimed it was a substitute body arranged by someone inside the hospital to make the whole thing look real. And he didn't stop there. He dropped a bombshell saying the entire operation was approved by Fidel Castro himself. Yeah, Castro supposedly agreed to give Tupac shelter in Cuba, but under strict conditions. No public sightings, no confessions, and total silence about the deal. Nice swore he had both audio and video proof, even recordings of Castro confirming the whole setup. But right before he could release that evidence, everything took a dark turn. In December 2018, Nice was suddenly found lifeless. No official foul play, no suspects, nothing, just gone. To people who believed his story, that wasn't a coincidence, it was a message, a warning to anyone else thinking of talking.
Feel mad still that my brother. First of all, that's the...
Nice had gone public saying he risked his life because nobody's been arrested, because Tupac's not gone. And just days later, he was gone too, for many. That was the moment the theory stopped sounding crazy and started feeling real. Everyone who's ever claimed to have real proof seems to vanish before their story can be confirmed. It's like anyone who gets too close to the truth just disappears. And even without Michael Nice's testimony, the official version of events keeps falling apart on its own. We're told that 4.40 caliber bullets struck Tupac at close range, but nothing about the reports makes sense. Eyewitnesses from the hospital can't even agree on what they saw. Some say Tupac was still awake and trying to speak hours after the shooting, while others claim he was taken away before police could even confirm it was really him. If his injuries were truly fatal, how could anyone move him across borders within hours? Something doesn't add up. And then there's the cremation, supposedly done right away, with a shocking $3 million cash payment to make it happen instantly. That number makes 0 sense. No cremation costs anywhere near that. It doesn't sound like grief. It sounds like someone paying for a disappearance, not a funeral. Meanwhile, everyone connected to that night has lived in a blur of mystery, power, and silence. Suge Knight, the man behind the wheel of that BMW the night it all went down, has spent decades bouncing between courtrooms, prison cells, and interviews, dropping hints, but never giving full answers. Every time he speaks, it feels like he knows more than he'll ever admit, like he's guarding a truth too dangerous to say out loud.
As soon as I walked out of there, I went in the bathroom and I threw up. Just laid on the floor for like 30 minutes. His mama came in there and cleaned me.
Suge Knight's always been the master of mystery, always hinting, never confirming. Back in 2014, he told a reporter straight up, Shakur's not gone. He's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar at the time. Everyone brushed it off as just Suge being dramatic. But now that quote hits completely different. Fast forward to this year, still behind prison wall, and Suge Knight suddenly flipped the script. He launched a podcast called Collect Call, and the energy shifted fast. During one early 2025 episode, Suge dropped something that made the whole hip-hop world freeze. Out of nowhere, he turned his attention towards Snoop Dogg, his former artist, now the public face of Death Row Record, and said, Snoop's got a lot of explaining to do about what happened in Vegas. That one line hit like a bomb. He was basically saying the version of events everyone believes isn't the real story.
That's why you get these type of individuals always kicking dirt on Pac name after they made their millions from doing these documentaries.
That statement shook the culture because just 3 years earlier, in 2022, Snoop had quietly bought the Death Row brand in a deal full of secrets. Nobody knows who backed it, how much cash really moved, or what assets actually changed hands. The papers were sealed tight and the numbers never leaked. So when Suge made that accusation right after the sale, people started connecting dots that didn't look good. Industry insiders began whispering that maybe that deal wasn't just about owning music, maybe it was about owning silence. The kind of silence that keeps the past buried for good. The feud between Snoop and Suge has always been wild, but now it feels deeper than old beef. It's not just about money or pride anymore. It's about who gets to control the story of Tupac's disappearance. And if Suge is telling the truth from inside prison, that story might be way darker than anyone ever imagined. Suge Knight's prison broadcasts have turned into a series of cryptic shots, messy, bold, and full of tension. He keeps questioning whether Snoop's new role is really about honoring Death Row or rewriting its entire history.
Chaotic. It's hard to actually figure out what's what, but it's becoming clearer. It's becoming clearer and clearer, but...
In one episode, Suge even hinted that certain people inside the label knew what went down in Vegas that night. And worse, that some of them profited from keeping their mouths shut. That statement sent chills through the industry. At the same time, old whispers started coming back to life. Former members of Tupac's crew, the Outlaws, have accused Snoop of quietly undermining Tupac's legacy while pretending to celebrate it. Even director Alan Hughes, the man behind the Shakur family documentary, added fuel to the fire when he said Snoop dimmed his light to let Shakur shine. Now, that line doesn't sound poetic anymore. Some fans believe he was saying a lot more than he meant to. Because if Tupac really survived and went underground, someone had to handle his absence. Someone had to take control of the label, the catalog, and the empire he left behind. And when you line up all the details, the rushed cremation, the missing hospital files, the insider confession, and now Suge's new claims, it doesn't feel like coincidence anymore. It feels coordinated. Every time a new clue pops up, it's either buried under fresh headlines or the person behind it just disappears. But the most chilling twist doesn't come from 1996 or even from 2018. It comes from last year. In 2023, a private investigator named Jimmy Poole dropped a bombshell online, claiming he'd found photographic proof that Tupac Shakur is alive and living quietly in Belize. That post blew up across forums before being deleted within hours. And Poole himself, he went silent right after. Fans are still asking, did he really find Tupac? Or did someone make sure we'd never know? Jimmy Poole's post hit the internet like a lightning bolt. He uploaded 2 photos showing a man in his 40s who looked exactly like Tupac. Same eyes, same jawline, same energy. The man was standing outside a beachfront cafe in Belize, casually posing with a local fan like it was nothing. But within just 48 hours, everything vanished. The photos were deleted, Poole's channel went offline, and his friends said they couldn't reach him at all. No police report, no press release, just silence. Again. And that's when things shifted from rumor to straight up menace. Because if Poole's photos were real, then Michael Nice wasn't the only one telling the truth. That would mean the network protecting Tupac didn't fade after the 90s. It grew stronger. It means the same people who pulled off the original escape are still out there, guarding the story, protecting the secret, and making sure anyone who gets too close simply vanishes before they can talk. The deeper we dig into Tupac's so-called death, the more it starts to look like a carefully planned disappearance. And the more people try to expose it, the more they end up silent, or gone completely.
He said it was, according to him, he said it was security that accepted money, participated in it, and it was so-called homies.
Jimmy Poole's 2023 revelation proved he wasn't just chasing attention. He was a licensed private investigator who said on record that he had photographic proof of Tupac living freely in Belize. Those photos showed a man in his 40s with the same piercing eyes, the same familiar scar tracing his jawline, and that unmistakable stare, standing under the bright sun outside a tiny cafe, right next to a fan smiling from ear to ear. Poole posted them on his verified account, promising there was more to come. But before anyone could ask for answers, both the pictures and Poole disappeared into thin air. 2 days later, his page was gone. Just like everyone else who's ever tried to prove Tupac never died. Every attempt to reach Jimmy Poole hit a dead end. Emails bounced back, his phone was suddenly disconnected, and just like Michael Nice before him, he vanished right when the story was about to blow up. That timing was way too perfect to be random. Both men shared the same eerie pattern. One was a former security officer, the other a licensed investigator. And both claimed they could prove Tupac Shakur had survived. They each promised undeniable evidence involving private flights, body swaps, and ties to Cuba. But every time the truth got close to breaking out, they went completely silent.
Ground, we had to stay heated and make sure that we protected ourselves, you know.
When you line up their stories side by side, the timeline feels almost scripted, like someone was erasing every trace of the truth before it spread too far. Even Poole's final post gave off a warning vibe. He wrote something cryptic about needing to go offline for safety reasons. After that, nothing. No follow-ups, no interviews, not a single trace of activity. It's as if both men were wiped off the map. And just when you think it couldn't get more suspicious, that $3 million cash payment pops back up, the one supposedly used for Tupac's cremation. That's one of the strangest details in the entire saga. Who drops that kind of money for a routine procedure? No records, no receipts, no paper trail. According to insiders close to the mortuary, the payment was made in cash, handled quietly behind closed doors, and never logged in any official system.
And I'm saying, everywhere we was going, we had to, you know, keep our eyes open, 10 toes.
And right after that deal went down, the crematory worker responsible suddenly retired, packed up, moved out of state, and disappeared from every professional directory. Too many vanishings, too many coincidences. It's starting to look less like chaos and more like someone's been cleaning up, one name at a time. No goodbye, no interviews, no trace. The crematory worker just vanished like he was paid to disappear right along with the body he supposedly burned. And while the people vanished, the justice system stepped in with what looked like closure, but felt more like a staged performance. In 2023, prosecutors finally charged former gang member Dwayne Keefe D. Davis with Tupac's shooting. On paper, that sounded like justice, but when you look closer, the whole thing felt too safe, too neat. They didn't go for the highest penalty, didn't push it toward a full public trial, nothing that could drag new names or old secrets into the light. It was like a controlled explosion, loud enough to grab headlines, but careful not to shake the system underneath. And then comes Suge Knight again, the only man still alive who was inside that car when the shots were fired. Even from prison, Suge refused to testify, claiming Keefe D was a childhood friend and saying he wouldn't wish prison on my worst enemy. But that doesn't sound like loyalty. It sounds like protection. Think about it. A man who built the most feared label in hip-hop, now defending the one person accused of taking out his biggest artist. That doesn't add up. So the question becomes, why? Why protect the shooter unless there's a bigger story being hidden? Maybe the real answer isn't in what happened after the shooting, but what was already brewing before it. Because those last few months of Tupac's life were chaos, a full-blown psychological war zone. Not just with East Coast rivals, but inside Death Row Records itself. By early 1996, the label that once promised him power and freedom had turned into a golden cage, full of pressure, paranoia, and people who might have had more to gain from his disappearance than from his success.
When you get to be the age that we are and you get to become as successful as we are, you have to start doing some things that matter for the future.
By 1996, Tupac was starting to see through all the glitter and smoke, the late night calls from record execs, the missing royalty checks, the feeling of being watched. It all started to pile up. Friends later said he'd become restless, anxious, and convinced that the people around him weren't just disloyal, they were playing both sides. What the world saw as creative genius was really a man on edge, realizing the empire around him was built on cracks. The first real sign came through his growing tension with Snoop Dogg. Just weeks before the Vegas shooting, the two were locked in what insiders called a silent war. Tupac felt betrayed after Snoop went on radio praising Biggie and Diddy, the same people Tupac believed had tried to take him out. Within death row, that wasn't just disrespect, it was treason. Loyalty meant survival, and any sign of friendship with the enemy could be deadly. People inside the label said that's when Snoop began pulling back, quietly talking to lawyers and outside managers, planning his exit before things got worse. To Tupac, that was confirmation of his worst fears. That the brotherhood Suge Knight bragged about was breaking apart, and everyone was trying to protect themselves before the fall. Behind closed doors, it was even uglier. Studio engineers and staff remembered late-night sessions turning into explosive confrontations. Tupac accused Suge of stealing from him, saying the numbers in his accounts didn't add up. His trust was gone, his circle was shrinking, and his paranoia was sky high. What looked like success from the outside was really a man surrounded by sharks, and he was starting to realize he might be the next one on the list. Tupac was furious. His albums were pulling in millions, yet his money was being controlled by people with deep mob ties. He wasn't just angry, he was ready to explode. He started confronting the suits directly, slamming doors, flipping tables, and vowing that once his contract ended, he was done with death row for good. The music that built his fame was supposed to be his escape, but by then, the walls were already closing in. He had already told close friends he wanted out. His plan? Start his own label, take his master tapes, and go fully independent. And if he had pulled that off, it would have exposed everything. The secret investors, the hidden accounts, and the shadow money funneling through death row's books. People knew if Tupac went public, the empire would crumble. Then came one summer night that changed everything. Multiple witnesses whispered about a violent blow-up inside a West Hollywood studio. Tupac was yelling that they were bleeding him dry. It wasn't just another outburst, it was rebellion. And the threat that followed that night sent a chill through the entire label. Some execs started meeting privately, trying to figure out how to shut him down before he took their secrets to the world. After that, the vibe around death row went dark. Bodyguards started rotating for no reason. Meetings got canceled without warning. And Tupac's phone, his lifeline to family and friends, suddenly wasn't private anymore. Every move he made was being watched. Looking back, the Las Vegas shooting doesn't seem random at all. It feels like the final move in a power game that had been boiling for months. A setup to silence the one man who knew too much and wasn't afraid to say it out loud. By that point, Tupac wasn't seen as an asset anymore. He was a liability, a man who knew too much and held the blueprint to the whole empire's secrets. And if the whispers are true, his disappearance wasn't just an escape from enemies, it was survival from the inside. Maybe he didn't fake his death to hide from the world. Maybe he vanished to hide from the same men who once called him brother. The ones who decided he was worth more gone than alive. That's where everything starts to blur, between loyalty, silence, and money. When Snoop Dogg announced his 2022 purchase of Death Row Records, it was sold to the public as a full circle moment, a legend reclaiming his legacy. But behind those flashy headlines, the paperwork told a different story. There was no disclosure of how much he paid, no mention of who financed it, and no clear record of which assets were included. Even the music catalog, the heart of Death Row, was strangely left out of the deal. Industry insiders started whispering that someone else must have been behind it. A silent investor with deep pockets and a reason to control what stayed locked away. Maybe that purchase wasn't about nostalgia at all. Maybe it was about keeping certain archives, certain truths buried forever. Then in 2025, Suge Knight broke his silence from behind bars during his Collect Call podcast and directly called out Snoop. He didn't mince words. What did you buy? Show me the paperwork, he demanded. To casual listeners, it sounded like ego. Just Suge being Suge. But for people following the Tupac mystery, it hit different. It sounded like a challenge, or even a warning. Was Suge hinting that the deal went beyond brand rights? That Snoop's takeover was less about music and more about rewriting history? Maybe the real transaction wasn't about ownership, but about erasing the last remaining traces of what really happened to Tupac Shakur, because hidden inside Death Row's assets were contracts, tapes, and private letters that could expose everything. Who handled Tupac's last recordings, how the money moved after his death, and who truly benefited from his disappearance. If those files were locked away or quietly bought out, then the story could be shaped however the new owners wanted forever. Even Snoop's own words sound different now. Years ago, he said that during Death Row's peak, he dimmed his light so Shakur could shine. Back then, it sounded like a moment of respect, one legend honoring another. But now, that line feels darker, because if Tupac's exit was part of a plan to make room for the next big star, it raises a haunting question. Did Snoop dim his own light, or did someone make sure Tupac's light was switched off so his could rise? Former Outlaws member Napoleon once said straight up that Snoop had grown jealous of Tupac's dominance inside the label, and director Alan Hughes, the same one who worked on the Shakur documentary, used the exact same phrase, Snoop dimmed his light. It's like everyone involved was repeating a coded truth hidden in plain sight. And when you start connecting everything, the vanished witnesses, the missing files, the $3 million cremation, the quiet buyout, and the new ownership sealed behind NDAS, it paints a chilling picture. This doesn't look like chaos anymore. It looks coordinated. A carefully managed disappearance, protected by men who built their empires on Tupac's name. Every decade brings new headlines, new arrests, new confessions, but never real closure. And everyone who gets too close to the truth either backs away or disappears completely. Tupac's so-called death was never just a tragedy. It was a full-blown operation, one that needed money under the table, silenced witnesses, and a record label sold in the shadows. The question now isn't did Tupac fake his death, it's who helped him do it, who gained the most, and who's still making sure the truth stays buried. Because if people this powerful are still protecting a secret almost 30 years later, what else are they hiding? Maybe the story of Tupac Shakur isn't over. Maybe it's still unfolding right now, piece by piece. So what do you think really happened? Drop your theories in the comments, let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this is one mystery that refuses to die, and we'll be here digging deeper every time the truth tries to hide. See you in the next video.